Hello, friends. Alright, I learned my lesson the last time that YouTube changed their streaming system, so now as soon as you start streaming from Open Studio, it immediately starts broadcasting. There's no go button or anything. So anyway, I'm liking how the metrics look a little bit better in YouTube's updated live streaming interface, I guess you would call it. So, doing something a little different today. A while back, I randomly stumbled across this gore sim, which, as I'm sure you all know, I'm not the biggest fan of gore necessarily, due to its misogynistic sort of undertones or overtones, as the case may be. But anyway, the sim was kind of cool just as a standalone thing, and wasn't really it was more focused on the free person or whatever, which was a little less misogynistic than usual. Anyway, getting off topic. The architect of the sim was this Sicilon admiral, and anyway, so he just randomly I DM me recently. You can see the message right here, full disclosure, that he made a new sim and he thinks it's really good and he wanted to see if I could make a video. So sure, why the hell not, I thought. Got nothing to lose. So Legendary of Gore is the landmark that he sent me, and I'm gonna go there and check it out, see what it looks like. I'm gonna be a little disappointed if this is exactly the same sim that I visited the last time, which actually it looks very similar, but I would suppose that you would reuse assets, That's just inevitable. But if this sim turns out to be not too exciting, I'm just going to immediately kind of hightail it for another sim on the world map. Okay, so there's rules. I really like this notice board. Man, this is super legible. I've seen a lot of message boards in Second Life, and a lot of times they are not nearly this aesthetic. That one's really nice. Maybe it uses a web on a prim thing. Pretty high quality assets so far. I hadn't even planned to make a video this morning. This is very serendipitous. So I logged in using the official viewer, so the frame rate is gonna be less than optimal because I'm not using alchemy. These are definitely higher quality assets than usual, so that much is clear. I'm gonna do a quick bird's eye view to see if this is very similar to the last one. So it's vaguely similar, but actually this is a fairly different layout than the last green sim, which it kind of blows my mind that I could remember the layout and the design of the last project that this guy worked on. To me, that's kind of almost unbelievable considering how many sims I've been to, but I do actually remember the layout of sims pretty well once I visited them. In fact, thinking back, I can sort of remember almost every single one that I've visited pretty well. Guy looks kind of like a, what's this, Han? It's kind of like a Mongolian headwear. And that looks like a Mongolian bow, a Mongolian sword. I don't know. It looks kind of like a Mongolian soldier to me, but sometimes I know you gotta be creative when you're a sim architect. You're basically taking assets from the marketplace that don't necessarily fit into the universe and sort of shoehorning them in there, which totally makes sense to me. It's artistic expression, and it's not under no circumstances are you ever gonna be like doing everything yourself. Unless you're like some kind of superhuman. So yeah, as usual, I'm just exploring the sim. I'm not like participating in the RP aspect at all, especially given that I'm not in any way a fan of the Korean universe. I don't know, that really brings up like an interesting sort of ideological or philosophical kind of aspect to this whole thing, because it's like, I don't know, I just actually, before I even got started talking about what I was just thinking, I had this other idea. What if you took like a historically misogynistic or racist or some kind of like hateful, upsetting franchise, or I don't know, the modern parlance would be like IP, right? Intellectual property. Um, and then you decided to like completely subvert it. Like you took the Korean universe and you created like a Korean sim, but instead you reversed it and made it like the men were the ones being oppressed and the women were the ones in charge. That would be kind of an interesting experiment, but I love subversive stuff like that. But I mean, I don't feel like it's a good thing to go in the opposite direction, because then you're just like, what's the term? So there's a misandry. I hope that's not what I was saying earlier. But yeah, discrimination, not in any way something that I'm in favor of. But that was kind of what I was thinking. I was like, well, if an intellectual property from the past, which, you know, a lot of these like 19th century, I don't know really the full historical context of Korean stuff, but I know the guy was like 60s, or actually, yeah, quite a while ago anyway. This guy wrote these books and created this universe, which was very sexist, as has been clearly defined by now. But it makes you wonder, like, if something like that exists and it becomes really popular and people become attached to it, is that something that can ever escape sort of the negative connotations of its origin story, you know? Like, is it ever possible to purify that and take like the positive creative aspects and isolate them, extract them, I guess, from the negative stuff? I remember these really well. They had a very similar like village setting, like with these kind of like rentals, I guess you would call them, in the last sim that I visited, that this guy made. So it's like a similar overall structure, but with definitely like some new areas, new designs. I'm actually really confused by these, like the juxtaposition of the sort of what I would consider incongruent assets. Like, yeah, sure, that windmill's like passable, but those are kind of like a 19th century Americana sort of like artifact versus something that you would expect from like a medieval period. I know, from what I know about the Korean like canon, basically there was like these aliens. It was kind of like a Riverworld scenario, I think, where there was humans living in this alien sort of terrarium, kind of, where the aliens had advanced technology and they were able to control the people and limit their technological advancement. What's a really nice asset? I like the normal map on there. What's the chimney's kinked though? That's not good. It's gonna block up your backflow. Let's see who made this. Roro. Bailey. Oh, cool. So this M2 has like a hidden cave system. The other one did as well, like a pretty extensive like tunnel system that went underneath the sim. Great work on the like composition of these assets. The cave system is really like well done aesthetically from my point of view. I think in general though, my personal opinion, my personal stance is that if an intellectual property has been tainted, especially by the creator, and it contains some kind of bigotry or hatred, you know, then it's really hard to salvage that intellectual property unless you were doing kind of what I was saying earlier when I had that random idea of like doing a parody version, kind of, where it's like you're basically mocking it, I guess you would say. And that is kind of like a really non sequitur kind of like action, I would think, because it's much easier to just, especially in our modern world where it's more liberal and more politically correct, it's much easier to just like distance yourself and dump and kind of like excommunicate any sort of negative or tainted intellectual property. Like, obviously that's like the first thing that happens in mainstream socio-political dynamics. Like, if some like politician, for example, is racist or says something racist, it's like that's a death sentence. You are boned. So I feel like that's a fairly rational response. I mean, honestly, that's almost like the only acceptable response. If it's like cut and dry, like if there's no ambiguity whatsoever. Oh, look at this adorable little cat. Ha ha ha. Oh, so cute. I like the detail on these little bungalows. Kind of like a mid-level detail. Like, they're not overstuffed, but they're not like underfurnished either. Wow, this is a really nice chicken vignette here. I wonder who made this. Sina Haste. Oh, that's the owner. What am I doing? Katrina Kristan. That's a beautiful little bird there. It's great detail. Once again, like perfectly optimized, right? Hitting that perfect balance between not being too detailed and not being over or under. Just the Goldilocks zone. So yeah, I guess the bottom line that I was trying to get to is like, you're on really thin ice if you're like creating something from a franchise that has well established, well documented, and undeniable racist, sexist, whatever discriminatory roots. But some people are into that kind of thing as role play, and what that brings in a whole new dynamic. Like, should everything be permissible in RP? Like if you have consenting adults, obviously the political optics of that are going to be really bad, no matter how you frame it. Like, that doesn't look good when you're like RPing racism or sexism, or like Civil War reenactments, for example. That's one that really kind of like fascinates me, because that is you're walking through a minefield there. At what point does role playing become like a subliminal sign of a wish or desire to enact or support those kind of attitudes? I feel like in a fully enlightened liberal society that's advanced, it kind of seems like everything should be permissible in RP as long as people are consenting and they are not like causing physical harm to each other. Although, I mean, there's dynamics there too with like physical, like BDSM and stuff, physical harm that's consensual, which is like another sticky slope, or a slippery slope, and it's like what really should be allowed or not allowed. And once again, like, ultimately it's really just up to the individuals to decide, because it's not like we don't live in a universe where there's a higher intelligence, alien civilization that kind of lords over us, and if it's omniscient spying probes determine that we're doing something that's inappropriate, then they enact to stop or punish or whatever. That's not the world we live in. People consensually do things that are completely unacceptable to the majority of society and culture as a whole, but that they're able to like justify within their own little clades, which is like fascinating. I don't know, what is this, like anthropology or sociology? It's like a multidisciplinarian sort of topic that has many different disciplines that all feed into it in order to arrive at some sort of a decision or ethical judgment. Oh, come on, I'm like right at the door. How close do I have to be here? Took over the menu, huh? I probably have to be part of the RP experience to like use some of these objects, so I'm just gonna have to inspect with my eye in the sky. Oh, there sure are a lot of cute cats. Oh, this one just killed a rat, which is kind of sad. It's a great rat, man. Look at the detail there. He's awfully proud of himself. Look at that smug muzzle. Yeah, I definitely think it's worth discussing all this stuff in detail. I mean, there's so many things to think about and worry about in the modern world, especially given sort of the current circumstances. But let's see, I was listening to this podcast the other day. I think it was one of the Nori Carbon Marketplace podcasts, and this guy was being interviewed, and I think he was some kind of like a philosopher, political scientist, and he brought this really good point about climate change that I hadn't really considered myself, like, thoroughly. Like, I definitely thought about it on occasion, but he was like convinced, and he had these really strong convictions about this particular point. And the more I thought about it, the more it made sense to me. And it was like, there are many ways to solve problems like climate change. There are technological ways, there are socio-political ways. But his point was that essentially, if you focus on social justice, well, actually, he came at it from the opposite direction. He was like, so say we do solve climate change technologically, via carbon removal, whether it's machines or just planting trees. There's a million different ways that it can be done. Converting our energy grid over to fully renewable energy that's also extracts carbon. Like, all of these things need to be done simultaneously, essentially, really, if you want to meet like the Paris Accords. But that's for another discussion. But anyway, like, if you do all that and you don't if you don't change the fundamental social justice problems. Oh, that's a really cool spiral staircase. I almost want to see if I can... Oh, this is like locked down though. Wow, there's a lot going on in this complex over here. But yeah, if you don't fundamentally create a just society, and you don't deal with problems like racism or sexism, it doesn't really matter if you solve a problem like climate change, because your world is a living hell. And while climate change is sort of more of a literal hell of everything being on fire and floods and plagues and just the absolute annihilation of climactic stability, which we all depend on for survival, it's like the worst kind of hell is one where you don't have any of those problems, but on a day-to-day basis, the way people are treated in a society, there's no respect, there's endemic abuse. So that was like sort of the first prong of this guy's argument, which after lengthy consideration, I was like, that's totally right. Like, climate change is just a tangible sort of problem, but in reality, the way society is working with like more slaves now than any time in human history, the way labor is not respected, the way workers are exploited and abused, the way the ecosystem is just being constantly destroyed. Like, those are the real problems, and those are more metaphysical, they're more philosophical, ideological. Like, what are humans willing to sacrifice? Like, that's more kind of the direction of all those metaphysical kind of problems. And those are a lot more important because those are the problems that destroy the soul of an organism. And like, even if the body is alive and thriving on some level, if the soul is being destroyed, ultimately you lose everything. your civilization collapses for other reasons than just the purely physical. So I mean, obviously we have the real challenge of we have this on both fronts, essentially, that we have to solve the spiritual dilemmas and the physical technical problems sort of at the same time. So the second prong of this guy's argument was basically that you can't solve the technical problems without solving the spiritual problems, because not only are they interlinked in a way that makes it impossible to de-link them, but that they really are kind of like feeding on each other. And so, like, as long as that sort of cycle of sustenance is maintained, you can't solve either problem. So, like, as long as the physical world is being eroded and destroyed, the spiritual world will be diminished and threatened, and vice versa. So, yeah, like, more about that in a minute, but I feel like I pretty much covered most of the sim. Obviously, there's a lot more to look at. The design is really tight. I'd say it's a lot more refined than the last edition, the one that I looked at, his first project. The asset quality is higher, definitely cool, and of course I haven't even touched on any of the RP stuff, which I've never done an RP in Second Life. But yeah, I'm gonna paste the SL URL into the chat here in case anybody wants to check it out. Alright. So yeah, that was Legendary of Gore. Now I'm gonna go to the world map and pick another random sim. I almost wanna like log out of the official viewer though. I'm just gonna look this guy now that I did his video. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna log out here, because as much as I like the official viewer for various reasons, Alchemy, just such a better frame rate. It's just insane how much better the overall frame rate is for making videos, at least. I pretty much always use the official viewer when I want to like preview the latest technology. But yeah, so I don't know, it's hard. It's really hard, because it's like which one of those challenges is more difficult? I mean, if you follow like the general rules of abstraction, you have the physical world as like the prime component, and then other things that extend from that are abstractions, and usually that means they're more complicated to solve rather than less complicated. But then if you factor in sort of the feedback, or the synergistic sort of loop, where you have the abstract, spiritual, metaphysical dimension that is then affecting the physical world that gave rise to it in the first place, that's like a third sort of layer, which is even more challenging, I think, to troubleshoot than the other two. So there's kind of like those three layers, and of course that like goes off into like this infinity recursive fractal, kind of like two mirrors facing each other kind of universe, where at some point within that infinite corridor of complexity, things either get impossible to solve or resolve themselves naturally, just by the the fact that they're part of this reflective matrix. Okay, holiday. I could use a holiday. I don't know about you guys, but a holiday from the modern world. I'm telling you, I've been here before. I'll talk about layers. What the hell am I even in the middle of here? Devil's Den world. Oh, is this another, like, motorcycle racing sim? Jesus, there are so many of these in Second Life. Like, I never realized it until I started doing the sim hopping. A little hangout spot here. Yeah, God, I've seen so many sims like this before. I'm just gonna do a quick eye in the sky thing. And whoever created this modular road building kit must be like a Second Life cajillionaire, because I've seen it on so many sims. This is a little bit more sophisticated than most of the ones that I've been to. Usually they just kind of like expand out farther and farther. I think it's a really cool thing to observe here that in Second Life, of course, lateral dimensionality of the sim is highly limited by the scale of the sim itself, but vertical dimensionality is virtually unlimited. You can, I mean, it's not unlimited, but you can just go up and up and up and up and up. So people often take advantage of that fact and build way up into the stratosphere, especially with like racetracks and stuff. So they're kind of constrained by the physical limitations of the sim infrastructure to always follow this sort of basic template. Part of me wants to explore this, but at the same time, since I've been in so many of these sims and I'm kind of just like over them, I'm just going to paste the SL URL and not explore this one. I'm going to find another more interesting sim on the map. Yeah, although I suppose ultimately my heart has always fallen into the camp of the spiritual abstraction layer is the most important, and it's like it really matters what's inside. Alright, let's try San Juan Island. No valid parcel, okay. Yeah, it's like, especially in the modern world when there's so much superficiality and like with, thanks to capitalism, like marketing and sort of just like the chrome and the gloss and the illusory impression. Alright, Secret Sanctuary. Let's try this. Is so prevalent, and it's like, well, this looks promising. Really great job on the landscaping so far. Maybe kind of an Asian, Japanese kind of like garden sort of vibe here. Lots of complexity. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't take somebody with abnormally high powers of observation and intuition to recognize, while that superficiality and sort of capitalistic entrepreneurial spirit is so dominant in our world, it's really toxic. It's really toxic. And like, that's a very confusing thing for a lot of people who may not have the intellectual fidelity to sort of hold those two contradictory thoughts in their head at the same time, like recognizing that our society thrives on capitalism, and it's responsible for all of the things that we love and hold dear. I'm talking, kind of personally about living in the United States. Obviously, there are other places in the world where that's not true, but at least for us in the United States, it's kind of like, it's really hard to deny the value of those systems, but at the same time, like, it's just as hard to ignore how they're kind of like killing us off in so many ways too. It's not like just one way. It's not like it's just destroying the environment, or it's just sort of chipping away at our ethics and spirituality, and it's kind of doing everything at once. It's really fascinating. It's like the most efficient system ever designed to kind of like annihilate a species. So that like contradiction is, for me personally, like the thing that in my mind convinces me and compels me to feel that spirituality is the most important thing. Like, sure, you can use science to solve a technical problem, and you may in fact create better outcomes due to that, but at the end of the day, you're still trapped in your own body. You're trapped in your own mind, and the decisions that you make, the way that you look at the world, and the feelings that you have in response to observations and all that is still intact. And like, if that is not working, this is a really cool little diorama. Like, if the spirituality is dysfunctional in some way, you're always going to be working against that in the physical world. So like, the spirituality is always going to be manifesting new problems for you to solve, and things are just going to get worse and worse until eventually your capacity to leverage science to solve those technical, physical world problems, it's just going to become untenable. And I think that's basically where we are now. I mean, literally, that's sort of like the problem with modern civilization, is that we've reached that point where our capacity to utilize science has come up against that wall of a spiritual crisis that is many magnitudes more profound and harder to solve. And unfortunately, that's a really bad place to be, because they're interlinked. So as long as you have this sort of like overhead of physical and spiritual crisis to contend with, it's going to be really hard to extricate yourself from that problem. God, even in Japantown, there's a strip club, of course. It's kind of a cool mural, despite its overt sexist nature. That's why my response ultimately is like sincerity. I feel like that's the only way to really combat any of these crises. Because it's okay to fail. It's okay to destroy the world, to become extinct as a species. I feel like that's alright. That's not the worst thing that can happen. I know it sounds like the worst thing, but in my mind it's not. The worst possible outcome is that you manage to go on forever, or functionally forever, while losing everything that made life worth living. That, in my mind, is the worst case scenario. And I feel like I'm in an anime here. This is like behind the scenes in every Japanese like anime. Like you got the volleyball court and the storage shed for all the athletic equipment. I've seen so many animes where certain scenes take place within the confines of these outbuildings. Oh, that's a nice asset. A little overbuilt though. Jesus, that water tank could be full of neutron stars and it wouldn't collapse. Genji hacks. Let's see, I think this is like maybe the third Japanese sim I visited in Second Life. I mean, I don't know if the creator is actually Japanese. Sometimes it could just be like some Westerner who really likes Japan and wants to recreate a Japanese city or village or whatever. Oh, this is a really cool building. I love this architecture. Oops. Someone's podcasting station here. More like a cam girl studio or something. Yeah, that's what I'd like to see more of in society. Like, if I could just choose one thing that there would be more of, it would be sincerity and honesty. Like, what really grinds my gears, what really irks me is, like, for example, these politicians who, like, are clearly corrupt to the core, who are demonic monsters. Like, it's not explicit, but it's kind of obvious to everyone. These people are, I don't want to say subhuman, because that's a dangerous kind of distinction, but they're the worst of humanity. However, and here's the key thing, the thing that really gets me, is they pretend to be normal people. That's a horrible phrase to use, normal people. They pretend to be ethical. They pretend to care. They pretend to be neurotypical, when in fact they're just straight up sociopaths. Or psychopaths in some cases. Like, and I'm not going to name any names because I don't think I have to. I think everybody knows who these people are. And that's the really weird thing. It's like, we know that these people are psychopaths or sociopaths. The proof is in the pudding. We see it's not their words that make it clear, but it's their deeds, right? Oh, that's like a biblical thing. It's just so ridiculous, but it's so true, unfortunately. It's the deeds that reveal the truth. But these people are masters of manipulation, of talking their way out of any culpability whatsoever. And they're not only are they masters of deception and manipulation, but like they're masters of deniability, and like they're just on that like fringe. Somehow they never seem to cross over the line where they can always just say like, there's reasonable doubt, you know, that normally we would be able to say like, this person is just a straight up racist. They should not be in a place of influence or power of any kind. Like, it should just be that simple. and they should just be thrown out on their ear, But instead, it's like, oh, I didn't mean it that way, or I've changed, or, there's all of this gray area flexibility within socio-political spheres that allows for these people to just continue to do what they do unchecked. And you gotta give them some credit. I hate to do this because they're monsters, but the truth is, anybody who can survive for that long being a deceptive liar and never cross that threshold or never be caught out, that's a really impressive feat. I just gotta come right out and say it. Like, I think it's horrible, it's unethical, it's monstrous. But the reason that they're there is because they have this talent or skill that somehow allows them to pull off this amazing feat of duplicity. It's really just quite incredible. So, yeah, that's what really bugs me. And if I had my way, like, I think there was like a movie like Jim Carrey, like Liar Liar or something, I don't know, where like basically if there was a way to cast a spell that made it impossible for people to lie, like that too would be sort of a monstrous world, I'm sure. But I feel like civilization would be better off. This is probably a really controversial statement, and I would be fascinated to know what other people think about this, although I'm sure I can already guess several different responses. But oh god, the classic tsunami wave. Honestly, never liked that piece of artwork. Massage chair. Some Japanese confections. Oh, this is like a bathhouse. The ladies' bath. Of course it's the ladies' bath. That's pretty cool. Like stuck in a palm tree. This is like taking a trip to Japan without even leaving my house. Just kidding. That's cool, like a sakura blossom table. That's pretty rad. Oh, that's some nice detail in that little blossom there. Oh, those mochi. Yeah, just imagine if politicians couldn't lie. Boy, would that be a game changer. Wow, 39,000 lindens tipped. Look at these huge donations. Riko Bosatsu. Probably the sim owner. It's a cool DJ table. There's the little like festival marketplace kind of zone with all the little concession stands. I'm getting hungry now. Wow, look at those corn on the cob. That's pretty cool. Those polygons? Wow, that's a lot of polys. Although at least they tried to optimize. They could have achieved that with a normal map, though, I think, almost as effectively. It's cool little like fish cookies. Some kind of like stuffing, like black bean paste maybe, or red bean paste. Here's like, what is this, like ikitasaki or something like that? Those little dumplings on a skewer. My Japanese is so like not in any way proficient. There's a little shrine. Sake bar. It's pretty classy. Watermelon. Slushies. Wow, look at this. Wow, that's crazy. Oh my god, why? It's so detailed. It's nuts. Even the corrugation on the cans, like, wow. It's a more or less empty building. Is that wisteria? I like how there's many different zones on this sim. Well, they're all kind of somewhat thematically similar. There's like a pagoda. It's a beautiful tea set. And Argita Hannah tea set. God, they got the color just right of that tea. Really, that's like a masterful rendering job there. And there's so many little things to find. Sort of like in the... Okay, a hurricane lantern! Wow, this may be one of the best I've ever seen. That's a really, really nice job there. Wow, there's a lot of extra details too on this one. But look, they don't have the control stem. It's just bizarre, like, so many extra bells and whistles, and yet, like, the most important part is absent. I'll give that like a 8.25 out of 10. That's a really, really nice piece of work. Good job on the wood stove too. Clearly the creator has their metal bake making down to a science. Let's see who made this. Corey Ito, of course. I thought I recognized like the telltale sort of quality there. Alright, what else do we have? God, there's so many different sections. This is where I was. You get to see a lot of the different like Japanese and Chinese assets that are on the marketplace, like the higher end ones. This little lily pad pond, wow, that's beautiful. That waterfall is nice. Oh, this is where I started, huh? how the doors work. They're just really slow. Ugh, my camera's like stuck to the door. Yeah, this is obviously a kind of a place you would want to visit in person because there's just so much to see. Wow, this bug zapper is so like well made. It's so detailed. They got the color of the UV tubes just right. What is this? Soy. Alright, Soy makes all these vending machines too. I've seen so many. Also, I'm trying to remember that other guy who makes all the vending machines. It's not coming to me for some reason. Tropical Paradise. Already looked at all those beach houses. Did I look at this? I think, yeah, I just sort of swung past that amusement park really quickly. Strip club, I already saw that. The school. So there was the Japanese village. That was the first place I went through. This house looks very out of place. It's another strip club, I guess. This better not be lollies. I think I don't even want to see that res. This was a pretty cool sim. So you never know like how true culturally accurate ethnic sims are, but I don't know, from what I've seen of Japanese culture, at least in like TV and stuff, it seemed pretty accurate. It's a fat Hamtaro. So yeah, saw pretty much everything on the sim. I think this was my favorite thing in the whole sim. It's just so cool. Did I check out who made this? Household Shinto. Altar. Oika Ugajin. Gotcha exchange. Whatever. Gotcha. It's like the gray goo of nano composite. Runaway. Super science. Eventually everything will just be gotcha. Just a big, continually growing pile of gotcha. So yeah, this was a cool sim. I totally recommend it. I told my partner I was only gonna stream for an hour, and it's at 58:36. So, oh, how exciting! All right, yeah, deep stuff. Thanks for stopping by. Thanks for humoring my hour-long crazy rants about stuff, and thanks for watching. Stay safe out there, friends. I'll catch you later.